Hello and welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we're creating a potted Monstera plant entirely in Procreate. So what you see on screen is exactly what we're going to be creating together. You can see we've added some shading to our leaves to give that a little bit of extra depth. So we're using two free brushes for this. The first is my free mono weight brush. You can pick it up when you become a free Every Tuesday email subscriber. And then the shading brush is actually a default charcoal brush that you already have in Procreate. For the hand lettering at the bottom, that is my jittery ink brush. It's part of my paid set of Font Lovers Procreate brushes. As always, the color palette is entirely free. There's a link right in the video description so you can tap on that, download it, and install it. This is a little bit more advanced than usual, so if you missed last week's tutorial on shading basics, I would check that out first and then come back to this one just because it is a little bit more advanced. All right, so we're going to create a brand new document that is 1500 pixels by 1500 pixels at 300 DPI, and then we'll get started. All right, I've got my canvas all set and ready to go. And the first thing we're going to do is grab a reference image that we can work from when we're stylizing our own illustration. So I'm going to head over to Pinterest right now. All right, I am in Pinterest. I will leave a link to this board in the video description. This is my flower reference photo board. There's a ton of different flowers and foliage that you can pull as reference images whenever you're creating any type of illustrations in Procreate. So I've already pulled this Monstera plant. And in order to bring it into Procreate, all you want to do is hit the three little dots right here and choose download image, and that will save it to your camera roll. Now we can head back into Procreate and bring it in. Okay, when you're in Procreate, just hit the wrench, go to add, and then insert a photo and go grab it. All right, I've got my image right here. I'm going to make it a little bit larger so I can see it better and just put it off to the corner. I want to create a more traditional clay pot for this. So I have my colors already loaded in right here. So you can see we've got more of like a reddish, orangish coral color for the pot. So we're going to create the pot first, and then we will add in all of our leaves and finish everything off with our shading. So in order to create this planter, all you want to do is grab this first darker coral color. I'm going to come over to my layers palette, make sure you create a brand new layer. I've got my mono weight brush selected. My size is about 4%. So I'm going to draw an oval, hold it until it snaps, and now I can move this a little further over here. All right, I'm going to duplicate it. So slide it to the left, choose duplicate, hit your cursor icon and make sure magnetics is selected down here, and you're just going to drag it straight down. And then you're going to grab the bottom node and push up a little bit, and that will reduce it uniformly from the center. So I just want it a little bit smaller than the top one. Now I'm going to merge these two together so you can just pinch them. And then I'm going to connect this edge to the bottom edge, but I'm going to give it a little bit of an arc with the line. And I always flip it around so my hand can do the exact same gesture this way. Okay, now we're going to drop color into the bottom. And then up here, we're going to drop in our dirt, but it's going to be on a layer underneath it. So I'm going to tap on my layer 1, create a new layer underneath it. I'm going to grab my darkest color, which is actually, it doesn't look like there's a color here because it's like the same color as the palette, but there's one right to the right of this lighter coral color. So tap on that, and then I'm going to be very careful to just draw inside of the white space right here, and then drop color in there. It's really important that this is on its own layer, otherwise the clipping mask won't work the way we need it to. So for the clipping mask, we're going to create a new layer right above our pot layer. Let me label these. So this is the planter, this is the dirt, and this is the rim of the planter. So for the rim, I'm going to grab the light color, and this rim is going to come down and around, and then all the way up. And then I can just fill this with color and then apply a clipping mask. So tap on the layer thumbnail and choose clipping mask, and it'll lock it right into whatever's underneath it. So that's why that works and snaps like that. All right, I want to add a little bit of shadow underneath this rim, that way just to give it a little bit more depth. So I'm going to create a brand new layer underneath the rim layer, but above the planter layer. So tap on the planter layer, hit the plus sign. I'm going to grab my dark red color, and then on the layer, I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. So tap the little N, toggle up, choose multiply, and now I'm just going to draw a single line underneath here. make it look like a shadow. I can make it a little blurrier by hitting my little magic wand, choosing Gaussian blur, and then just scaling this up a little bit. All right, that feels good. I'm going to reduce the opacity down just a little bit. So I'm gonna come down to like 60%. The next thing we wanna do is add a little bit of texture to this pot. And in order to do that, we're going to create a new layer right above the planter layer. So add a new layer. This is automatically going to take on a clipping mask, and we're just going to change the blend mode to multiply again. We're going to grab our charcoal brush. So in the brush library, come down to charcoals and select to be compressed. Let's see what size this is. That looks pretty good. So my size is 5%. So I'm just going to shade a little bit up at the top and then down on this side. Okay, reduce the opacity down to like 70%. All right, I'm going to add a shadow just so it's looking like it's sitting on something. So above my dirt layer, I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to return to my mono weight brush. I'm going to grab my dirt color again, which is all the way at the bottom. It's the third one. And then just create another oval. Drop in color and reduce the opacity down to like 20%. All right, we are all set to start drawing our leaves, which is definitely the fun part of this. So I'm going to group all the layers that we've done so far together. So just select one and then drag all the rest of them to the right and then choose group. And let's label this one planter. Okay, so let's get started with our leaves. We're going to create a brand new layer. We're going to grab the first green color right here. And you can see this is the leaf right here, and it's kind of hanging straight down. And all these leaves are kind of heart-shaped. So whenever you're concerned about scale, when you're first drawing your first leaf, I always make my art just a little bit larger than I probably need it because I can always scale down, but as soon as you try scaling up, you're going to be stretching those pixels and then you can get blurry edges. Always err on the side of caution by creating your artwork larger than you probably need it. So I'm going to create my heart shape. I'm going to make it a little less of a heart up at the top by making it a little curvier. Drop in my color. I'm going to add my lines to it. So let me label this leaf 1. Create a brand new layer. I'm going to label this lines. I'm going to grab my lightest green color. Let me apply a clipping mask to this so it locks it inside of the shape. So tap on the layer thumbnail, choose clipping mask. I'm going to reduce the size down to 2% and then just draw a line straight through. And then we're going to kind of have like a curve to your line. And I'll do like 3 on each side. Okay, and now we can drop in our negative areas. Actually, I think I'm gonna make another one up here. I'm looking at my reference photo. So when I'm working from a reference photo, I like stylizing it so it still feels illustrative, but I wanna make sure that I'm referencing real parts constantly. So I see that they go all the way up on this one, so that's what I wanna do. Okay, so for our negative spaces, you can use your eraser tool, but I recommend using layer masking. Layer masking is a non-destructive form of editing, so whatever you temporarily hide, you can always bring back if you change your mind. So if you missed my video on layer masking, I'll leave a link on the screen and in the video description. Highly recommend checking that out because it's a really, really smart way to work. Okay, so I'm going to come to my leaf 1, tap on the layer thumbnail, choose mask. When you do that, it automatically defaults to black. Black conceals, white reveals. So whenever you're painting in black, you're hiding elements of whatever layer the layer mask is attached to. If you're painting in white, you're re-revealing it. Watch that video and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so I've got black selected, so whatever I paint on this layer now will be hidden, so it will look like I'm erasing it. And then if I close off the end right here, I can fill it with black just like I would with a regular color, so it can really speed this process along. Okay, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking I need to make my lines just a little bit lighter in color. So on my lines layer, just hit the N and I'm going to drag this down to like, let's go to 50%. So I'm going to group all these together. So this is my leaf 1 group. So label this leaf 1. Okay, I'm going to do one more leaf with you and then I'll speed up the video and finish off the rest of the leaves. So as you're working, refer to your reference photo and then make decisions about how you want to make it your own with your own illustration style. So for this next leaf, you can see it's kind of behind this one. So I'm going to make the next leaf behind it, but I'm going to change up the color just to add a little bit more interest and depth to the piece. So create a brand new layer. I'm going to drag it underneath my leaf 1 group because I know I want it sitting behind behind my leaf one. And for this one, I'm going to make the color this fourth color right here. So it's a little darker, a little different. And I've got my mono white brush still selected. Let me label this leaf 2. And this one's going to be drawn in at a little bit of an angle. Let's see how that feels. I'm going to rotate it a little bit. I think I want this to look a little bigger. I'm going to turn off my leaf 1 temporarily so I can draw this. Draw this to make it bigger. Do not scale it up because that's when you get those blurry edges. I like how that looks. I'm going to turn off leaf 1 just so I can see what I'm doing a lot better from here on out. So create a brand new layer, label this one lines. Create a clipping mask, so tap on the layer thumbnail, choose clipping mask. I'm going to choose that same light color again for this one. I'm going to make sure my brush size is 2%. Okay, return to leaf 2, tap on the layer thumbnail, choose mask. And now I'm going to grab my mono white brush again. It's black, so I'm hiding the different areas of this leaf. Okay, that's my second leaf. I'm going to group all of these together, label this leaf 2. Let's turn leaf 1 back on to see how it looks. That's feeling pretty good. I'm going to add in 4 more leaves and repeat the exact same process. You draw your leaf, you draw your lines, and then add a layer mask to put in your negative space areas. I'm going to speed up the video and complete this, the last 4 leaves, and then I will be back. Okay, now that I've got all my leaves in, you can see I've made a few different decisions than what is in my reference photo. I decided to make my smaller leaves down at the bottom, not have as many notches in them, and also be much smaller than my top leaves. So these are like new growth leaves. That way the piece doesn't become overwhelming with too many leaves that are similarly sized. I felt like they would be competing for attention if I had done that. So now that I'm done with my reference photo, I can turn it off. And I want to center everything on my screen. So I'm going to select everything and then just move it to the center. That looks pretty good. Okay, so we need to put in our stems on all of these leaves and then we'll apply our shading and then we'll be done. So for the leaves, I'm going to come at the very bottom, right above my planter group, and create a new layer, and I'm going to make all of these stems kind of different colors. So I'm going to start with my darkest color for the furthest back leaf, which is probably going to be this one. So I'm going to pretend that it's coming down and coming straight here. Let me make this a little bigger. This is going to be 4%. Okay, and then I will grab another color. Okay, that's all looking good. So if you caught last week's tutorial, you know that we apply a clipping mask when we're using our shading. That way we can apply it just to the element that's underneath it. So for this top leaf, we're going to have the light hitting directly in the center of it. So I'm going to add a highlight to this leaf. So I'm going to come up to leaf 1. I'm going to create a new layer right above it, and it will automatically take on a clipping mask because there's a clipping mask above it. It kind of automatically gets locked in when you do that. So I'm going to grab a lighter color than the color of this leaf because I know that I want it to be a highlight. I'm going to grab this 4th green color. I'm going to come over to my brush library, enter the charcoals category, and select the 2B compressed brush, and let's see how this looks. And it's nice and subtle, but you can still see that effect. Okay, so for this leaf, I know that it's getting some shade from this leaf. I'm going to use my shading as a shadow instead of a highlight for my second leaf. So let's close that up, come to leaf 2, create a new layer above the leaf 2 layer, and then I'm going to grab a darker color than this one. So I'm going to grab this middle green and then just shade this part of the leaf. So for this leaf over here, because it's so dark, I'm going to opt to add a highlight instead of a shadow. So the highlight would be on this edge because it's not being covered up. So I'm going to come over to leaf 3, create a new layer right above it. I'm going to grab a lighter color than the leaf color. So I'm going to grab this first green color and then just shade this edge. this one's the next one. So we're going to add a little bit of shadow to this edge. So let's come to leaf 4, create a new layer again, and darker color than this one, I'm going to grab this darkest color and just shade this edge. Now we've got this one, so I'm going to apply shadow, and it's going to be this color right here. And then finally for this one, I'm going to add a highlight on that one. And I'm going to grab my lightest green color and just give it a little bit of highlight on this edge. So feel free to add as much or as little as you'd like. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is add in our finishing touches. I'm going to add a ring around the background. So I'm going to create a new layer right above my reference photo layer. Let me close up that group. I'm going to grab my lightest coral color. I'm going to return to my mono weight brush and just draw a circle and then hold it and it will snap. And then I can hit edit shape, circle, and then just drag it where it feels like it's centered. And then I can fill it. I'm going to reduce the opacity down to, let's see, 20%, I think. And then I can put in my lettering. Let me reduce the size of my plant itself because I need to make room for the lettering. Make sure magnetics is applied when you're reducing the size of everything. That way it scales uniformly. Okay, for my lettering, I'm going to grab my 4th green color right here. I'm going to turn on my guides. That way I know that I'm drawing everything nice and straight. So I'm going to hit the wrench, go to canvas, turn on drawing guide, edit drawing guide. I'm going to make my grid size a little bit smaller. I'll make it darker so you can see it better. Done. Now I can write out my lettering. I am using my jittery ink brush. It's part of my Font Lovers brush set. I'll leave a link in the video description to this. Okay, turn off your drawing guides, and there we go. So that's how to create a potted Monstera plant directly in Procreate, complete with highlight and shadow shading using 2 free brushes. Once again, the links to everything mentioned in this tutorial are right in the video description, including that Pinterest board, the free color palette, and all the brushes used throughout the video. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of new tutorials just like this one in the future. For more Procreate tutorials and freebies, head on over to my site, every-tuesday.com. You can also find me over on Instagram. My handle is everytuesday. If you try this out and post it there, I would love it if you tag me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.